thank you everybody for joining us today. We are experimenting with this new way of doing town halls, and so bear with us as we work to figure it out. But I think from the ones that I've already done, it's a good format and allows me to stay in touch with you all, which is actually more important today than it is even under normal circumstances. So thank you for being part of this. I am standing in my kitchen in my house in Ringoes, New Jersey. I suppose all of us are doing this from a kitchen or a living room or a rec room or a basement. Here we are sitting at home, and I know that it can be very, very frustrating. I know that for many people, this feels very isolating. But I want everybody to remember that even though we are physically isolated from each other, we are all taking part in one of the great community efforts in American history. All of us working together, fighting together against a common threat. And it is making a difference. As best as we can tell, even as limited as the data may be, it is absolutely making a difference in saving lives and in easing the burden on the heroes working in our hospitals at a very critical moment, because we all know that the trajectory of the curve in New Jersey shows that the next 2 weeks are potentially going to be the hardest. We may hit the peak in about 10 days or so. So what all of us are doing, it may feel like we're doing nothing, it may feel like inaction, but it is actually a truly important and inspiring example of collective action to help our communities, our state, and our country get out of this unfortunate situation. So first of all, thank you for that. I have been doing everything I can to make sure that we get the federal support that all of us need to make it economically possible for us to follow the public health advice that we have been given, to shut the businesses, to stay home. We know that the toll is already very, very great. Over 12,000 Americans have died, according to the official statistics, which are absolutely undercounting the true toll of this epidemic right now, in my view. We had over 6 million unemployment claims in our country last week, the most in history. It is placing an unbelievable burden on the system, but somehow we have to keep up and shoulder the responsibility that comes with that. Congress has passed several pieces of legislation, which I'm sure you all have read about, that aims to help people who are suffering economically, enhanced unemployment compensation, paycheck protection loans for our small businesses to enable them as best as possible to keep employees on their payroll. There'll be, as I'm sure you know, $1,200 checks being mailed out to individuals making up to $75,000 or $150 if you're a married couple, and a whole host of other smaller programs to ease the burden of this crisis. There'll be a lot of money for our hospitals, and they're going to need it. That's something that we fought for in the House of Representatives and negotiated and won in the last bill. There'll be a lot of money for our state and local governments. Again, that's something that the House of Representatives insisted on, and we got in the last bill. And it's not yet enough, and I'm working on trying to get us some more, because our municipalities and counties are at risk of going bankrupt if they don't get some help. There's a lot more that we have to do. And then as we climb out of this, we need to think about the recovery strategy. And I am determined, and I'm not alone in this, to make investment in infrastructure the centerpiece of our recovery from the COVID-19 epidemic. Boy, would that be good for New Jersey, but also good for the country as a whole, in putting people to work, in getting the economy humming once again, so that we are making things, producing things, replenishing ultimately the revenue that that we are losing in helping people get through this difficult moment. All of those programs sound great on paper. I'm very proud of them, and I know that in practice, you know, we're just a few days into this. There's a lot of confusion, even chaos out there, and there are things that we have to fix. So I want to hear from you today about all of that. I want to take as many questions as I can live. The questions that we can't get to live, we will, if you give us contact information, we will try to get back to you afterwards. And I want to hear about any experiences that you're having that might inform my efforts to try to fix the problems in the next piece of legislation and the one that comes after that. And if you have any questions that are non-COVID-19 related, have at it. You know, it's not the only thing happening in the world, and I'm happy to take questions on any subject, just as we would at any normal town hall meeting. So with that, I will hand the reins back over to DeAndre, who will moderate us, who will take questions, those submitted in advance, those that you use the chat feature to submit to me, or just old-fashioned raising of hand. Hopefully we'll see you. There's also the little hand wave button that you can press, which DeAndre will certainly see. So with that, over to you. DeAndre? Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah.
Sorry,
We're ready for questions.
Thank you, Tom. So your first question comes up from a pre-submitted question. Unemployment benefits are better than nothing, but preserving jobs by subsidizing payroll would be much better. What can Congress do to prevent the destruction of millions of jobs and thousands of companies?
That's exactly the point of what we are trying to do here. Some people are going to have to go on unemployment, but far, far better for people to stay on the payroll of the companies or organizations that they currently work for. We want to preserve that relationship between employers and employees, keep companies whole to the extent that we can, even if their doors are shut, so that when we are ready to resume normal life, we can resume it as seamlessly and as quickly as possible. So the main program that we put into place to achieve that is this Paycheck Protection Program, which allows businesses with less than 500 employees, small, medium-sized businesses, to receive loans from the federal government through their local banks that are 100% forgivable if they retain their employees, if they've got the same number of people employed in June as they did back in February. That went live on Friday, and people are applying today, and the system is far from smooth yet. And we'll probably hear some, I imagine, hear some stories about that on this call. But in principle, when it's working as it's supposed to work, it will enable small and medium-sized businesses to keep their employees fully on payroll with a loan that they will not have to pay back, so long as they meet those terms.
Thank you, Tom. Your next question, your first question from our live will come from Vint. Vint from Westfield. Can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Congressman, first, thanks for taking the time for doing this. Great to see all of my fellow citizens turning out for this, and hopefully everyone's well out there. I'd love to hear about the current thinking about the components of what I assume is going to be another federal stimulus bill. I know there's already discussions about it. But specifically what you're thinking about in terms of some kind of national vote by mail provision. We're seeing the craziness that's going on in Wisconsin today on the news, and I'm just curious if that's a priority for you amongst the many that I know are there, and how the caucus is thinking about making that an element of the next piece of legislation.
It's a very big priority for me. In the last piece of legislation, I led an effort to get it into the bill. I got something like 60 of my fellow House members on a letter to our leadership urging them to include both money for states to go to vote by mail and a mandate requiring all states to have that as an option in November. We can mess around with primaries. I don't like it, but you know, the country will survive if primaries get delayed or not run perfectly. But we can't mess with the November election. It must happen when it will happen by law. And so the only question is, will it be safe for people to vote? And we've heard from public health experts that even if the epidemic recedes in the summer, it may return in some form or in some parts of the country in the fall. So what we're seeing in Wisconsin today could very well be the reality in some states in November if we don't act and act soon. So I'm pushing hard to get it in the next bill. And by the way, what happened in the last bill, we got some of the money, but the Senate refused to give us the mandate, the requirement. We need more money and we need the mandate. You know, I don't get why this gets partisan, honestly. It has gotten partisan. I was criticized by a bunch of folks, you can guess who, for trying to sneak unrelated to COVID-19 priorities into the bill. Of course, this is 100% related to COVID-19 because look at Wisconsin. People are being forced to choose between exercising the right to vote and keeping themselves safe and healthy. It's unbelievable that this is happening. We can't let that happen in November. So I'm going to fight as hard as I can to get it in the next bill, and we'll see what happens.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vince. Our next question comes from a question that was submitted beforehand, Tom. How are COVID numbers determined? Numbers of newly diagnosed, numbers of deaths in the state, especially in light of recent facts regarding testing being minimal?
It's a very good question. We determine the numbers based on testing. So there you have it. If you look at the national statistics, if you look at the portal, the web portal that the government of New Jersey has put up, which is an excellent resource, it relies on the case numbers are basically people who have tested positive. And we do not have widespread testing right now. And until we do, I would treat all of those numbers with some skepticism. They can show us trend lines, but certainly they are not an accurate reflection of the total number of people who are currently infected, or the total number of deaths, because we have people, I personally know people who have passed away probably because they had this, but they weren't tested. And that it pains me on a personal level and frustrates me to no end, because if you cannot measure a problem accurately, you're not going to be able to solve it. And so we're not where we need to be on testing right now. What are we doing about that? The easy part is money, and that's where Congress can do its work. We can provide the money. to do just about everything. And we have provided a tremendous amount of resources for our public health system to do what needs to be done. The harder thing is the production and distribution of the supplies that are necessary to do these things. And this is where we were late as a country in comparison to other countries, like South Korea, for example. First case there recorded on the same day as the first case in the United States. And yet today, South Korea is mostly open for business. They flattened the curve, and look at where we are because they ramped up production of testing and the protective equipment necessary to conduct those tests early on. We didn't do it. So that's where we have been. We now have drive-through testing in Union County. It's not enough, but it's actually working better than most other counties. We have nothing in Somerset County, which I also represent, or Hunterdon County, which I represent. And I've been working with the governor's office to try to get them what you have in Union County. And we're also looking to speed the introduction of newer and better testing technologies that would allow for, for example, a simple saliva test that will get you an instant result, where you could do it at a drive-through center, you could even do it at home or at a CVS. This is where we need to be to have the information we need to start opening up the country again.
Thank you, Tom. Our next question comes from Chris from Springfield. Chris?
Hi, Congressman. How are you?
Hey, Chris.
First and foremost, as Mayor of Springfield, I just want to thank you again for all the work you and your staff do, both for Springfield and Union County. Anytime we've asked you to do anything in terms of support, you've always been here for us and then some. So we do really appreciate you reaching out to us. My question, I'm also an educator. I've been in education for over 20 years. I'm a school administrator. And I have a concern, as you spoke to or alluded to, in terms of things we can do in the future. Obviously, this is a scenario that affects all of us. By the end of this, I believe we'll certainly know someone who has either got this infection or, God forbid, has passed away. But you're also talking about not only affecting us as adults, but also our children, who right now are doing a virtual education. So with all the stresses of life going on, not being able to do something they're used to, like attend school every day, they're also dealing with this unimaginable pandemic. I would just encourage you, if you can, for you and your staff to consider moving forward some type of wellness initiatives or wellness packages in your next bills for not only adults, but also our children. So they may be able to get through this. Obviously, at a very young age, they're going to have experiences with family members or friends who have been victim to this. And we want to know and be sure that moving forward, that our students and our young ones are getting every resource possible they can to put them in the best possible position to get out of this with some therapy and some resources to go to if they need help. Thank you very much, Congressman. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris. That's a great idea, and look forward to fleshing it out more with you. Obviously, our kids are experiencing this in a unique way, with school effectively done for the year, with distance learning. I've talked to a lot of high school age kids who seem to be persevering. They're resilient and adaptable in an inspiring way. And fortunately, most of our communities have the resources to make that work. That's not true in all of the country, where not everybody has even like basic broadband access for kids to be able to do the distance learning. Even in our district, out in the very western corner, in Warren County, for example, that is an issue that we have to work on. But absolutely, when we get to the recovery phase, there are all kinds of things we haven't really thought through yet. So you raise a very good point.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you again. Before we move on to our next question, just a reminder for anyone on the call, if you do have a question and you would like to ask the Congressman while he's on the call, please just use the chat feature at the bottom of your screen. please send us a message with your question, your name, your town you're from, a phone number or email. So if we don't get to your question here on the live, we can definitely have our staff member follow up. On to our next question. We have Howard from Springfield. Howard, do you hear us?
Yes, I'm here. What I wanted to ask, I mean, this is a global problem. It's not just New Jersey and the United States. And it doesn't seem, unless the news is not giving us, it doesn't seem there's coordination both in handling it and looking for solutions and economic future with other countries in the world. Is Congress doing anything about that?
Right now, it's a very good question. Right now, there's more competition than coordination, including every country, every state, every city, every country scrounging for supplies from the same suppliers, masks and ventilators and gloves. And I find it not just frustrating, but deeply embarrassing that the United States is begging the world for supplies of that stuff, and that our federal government hasn't centralized, nationalized the acquisition, but rather is leaving cities and counties and states to kind of fend for themselves. I've got companies from China like reaching out to me, marketing gloves. I shouldn't be doing that as a congressman. And every country, again, is competing for the same stuff. If we were leading the world in the way that we traditionally do, we would be coordinating with particularly our allies, trying to set up a system where we are pooling our efforts rather than competing. In part because when you compete, the price of everything goes up. And the supplies go not necessarily to where they need to go, but to whoever has gotten to the supplier first.
But also the planning for the economics. In other words, if we alone work on economics, it's a global economy.
Exactly. And so there are institutions like the World Bank and the IMF where we should be working right now to try to think about a global economic recovery as a result of this. Look, we're paying the price, in my opinion, for 3 years of policies that have decimated the federal workforce, institutions like the State Department, which in turn has been hurt because about half of our diplomats have been pulled back from their posts around the world due to the COVID epidemic. I'm not sure if that was 100% necessary, but that's the reality. This is, yes, it's a crisis where we have to take care of our people first, but traditionally the United States has led the world in moments like this. And the thing about being America, we are so powerful, we are so rich. Whatever we do, we're leading. Whatever we say, we're leading. Whatever we refuse to do, we are leading, because the world follows our example. They look to us. So even when we're not consciously trying to lead other countries around the world, our actions are having an effect all over the world. But the hardest question you asked is what Congress can do about this. And I have to honestly say not very much, because the foreign policy powers are really vested in the President of the United States. We can pass resolutions, we can write letters, we can make statements, we can try to criticize bad policies, but day to day, Congress cannot lead the world on behalf of America. Only the President can do that. And so, we fight this epidemic with the President we've got.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Thanks, Tom. Our next question comes from Michael. Michael, are you still on the line?
Yes, I am.
Go ahead, Michael.
Okay. Hi, Congressman.
Hi.
Hi. So I wasn't able to get into the SBA kitchen meeting that you had earlier. So I just had a specific question. Hopefully you can help direct me. I'm a sole proprietor with no employees. I'm a psychotherapist, and my wife's an independent contractor. She's a literacy consultant for schools. And we just haven't been able to get clear information about applying for the PPP. It seems like we're eligible, even if we don't have employees, but we have to wait until Friday to apply. And so that seems correct.
Yes.
And I tried to go through, our bank is TD Bank, and when I called their business department, they don't really know what to suggest or even say. They're just kind of a funnel, right? To just take the application, but even the application is not geared towards anyone without an employee, and then I'm not eligible based on answering their financial wizard.
Right.
So it's frustrating. My wife was on for hours trying to get through unemployment insurance this morning. So it's because everything's geared towards having employees or so I'm just wondering, so it seems like we're eligible. We have to wait until Friday to apply. That's
correct.
Okay.
So you should be eligible, and the system is open to people in your situation starting on the 10th, which I guess is Friday.
Right.
And what we were told this morning, there's an online form that seemed fairly simple to me in the sense that it asks you questions like, what are you? Are you a fish, a fowl, a turtle, a rabbit, right? And what, are you a sole proprietor, independent contractor? And that, I think, presumably we'll get you a more precise answer after this, but what my understanding is that will by Friday be geared to those who will be applying starting that day, where if you apply that day, you will see that, if you answer yes to that question, am I a sole proprietor, independent contractor? It will then take you to a series of pages that are appropriate to your circumstances.
Okay. So we have to go through TD Bank because that's where our checking accounts are. So are you saying that they'll update, or they
should have better guidance?
Yeah, they have no guidance. I was teaching them.
Yeah, they should have better guidance, and I'm emphasizing the word should. I'm not saying will. I'm saying should.
Right.
But we are aware of these problems. Me and 434 other members of Congress who are hearing exactly the same things from their constituents and working as hard as we can to fix them. And, we gave this to banks, and not all banks are participating with the same degree of enthusiasm. It's also complicated for them, and they're cautious and conservative. But I think what we need to impress on them, we members of Congress and the Trump administration, is that they have been drafted, just like soldiers are drafted in a war.
Right.
They have to do this. And by the way, they're lending our money. They're not lending their money. We've given them taxpayer funds to lend. They just need to do it. And I've heard a lot of stories about banks adding requirements that don't actually exist, or choosing one set of customers over another set of customers. They're not allowed to do that. And as we work out the kinks, we're going to need to impress that on them. So bear with us, be a little patient. We'll also get back to you after this in case anything I said should be elaborated on or was not entirely complete.
Okay, thanks. I guess my last part of that was just, if we don't get through on Friday, I know the New Jersey Small Business Emergency Grant sold out in an hour. So I'm concerned also about the PPP. If we don't jump in it, everything is competition, and it's really discouraging that it's like that.
Yeah.
So I'm just, I don't mind waiting a couple of days or whatever, but I'm just concerned again that, at some point there's just,
they'll run out of money. Yeah. So
everything's first come, first served, which seems to be like an inequality kind of way of doing it, but it's,
yeah, I'm aware. We're all aware of that, and my sense is we're going to need to add money to the program.
Okay.
That's on the to-do list for the next package.
Okay, I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Michael.
You're welcome.
Thank you again, Michael. And for those that did miss the small business form that we did earlier today, we have published it on our social media and our YouTube pages. So we can definitely make sure that gets sent around, or that you have access to that resource so you can see that video and learn or see different notes that other people's questions that they asked during that as well. Our next question comes from Lynn. Lynn from New Providence, are you on? Lynn, can you hear us?
Yeah, hi. Hi. I wanted to know, we've heard that there is a portal that will be available to provide banking information for direct deposits for the stimulus check. And I'm curious as to whether that's been set up or when it may be.
Not yet. That we are told by IRS will come end of April or beginning of May. So backing up here, this is a question about these $1,200 stimulus checks that will be sent out to many Americans. Basically, any individual income under 75,000 or married couples under 150,000. It phases out after that. If the IRS has your direct deposit information, if you gave it to them in a previous tax return, then you will get, if you qualify for that, you will get the cash direct deposited starting next week, is what they tell us. Well, about 60 million people will get a direct deposit next week. Social Security recipients will also get a direct deposit. If the IRS does not have your direct deposit information, well, one thing you can do is just file a 2019 return now, even though the deadlines have been extended. If you give them the information that way, you can do it today. And they tell us that they're updating every week based on the 2019 returns that they are getting. And then the final option is what you suggested, what you asked about. They're going to set up a special portal, but again, not until the end of the month, where you can update that information separately.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you, Lynn. Our next question is from Jeannie. Jeannie from Cranford. Can you hear us?
Jenny? Yeah.
Yeah, Jenny? There you go. My apologies. Go ahead.
Hi, Representative. So my question is about parents. You can see my little baby here is trying to hit the keyboard. So this is my day all day, trying to work from home. My husband as well. So I'm wondering if there's any plan to help parents who are working from home full time, maybe leave without pay. Right now, we're just told to talk to our supervisors, but our concern is that if businesses start to tank and people start to get laid off, now isn't a good time to be asking for a break.
Yeah. Would you normally be using childcare?
Yes, full time. Yeah. Yep.
So one of the provisions in the second bill that we passed allows employers, and in fact, in some cases requires employers, to give you paid leave.
Okay.
Sick leave and family medical leave. But both of those categories include people who have to stay home because their kid's school or daycare has closed.
Yep.
And if they do that, if your employer does that, the federal government will reimburse them 100% of your salary for the duration of your leave through the payroll tax contribution system. So they can stop basically contributing money to your payroll taxes to get immediate cash relief. And if that's not enough, which it probably won't be, they will get a rebate. They will get a refund, sorry, through the payroll tax system to cover your salary. So that's something that should be available to you.
Okay.
There depends on the size of the employer a little bit, but it should be. And we can follow up with you afterwards, just again, to look at your specific situation and confirm whether or not that that would apply to you.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you. Our next call comes from John from Westfield.
Hello, that's me.
Hi, John.
You can hear me. Thank you, Congressman, for this opportunity to chat with you. I appreciate it very much. And I know that you've been working in the democratic process in our party for a long time. So you're not just joining the club, you've been there a long time, and I appreciate that. What I wanted to ask you is, I'm a mental health counselor, and I appreciated the question that Michael asked earlier. What we will be called to do eventually is the pick up and help put things back together in people's lives when this begins to die off, the virus. So my original question to you was, are you, or is the government, or I don't know if you know about the state of New Jersey, are they aware that we're going to need additional good mental health clinicians for the nurses, for the doctors, for the people who've lost loved ones, for the children? There's going to be a lot of grief, a lot of depression, substance abuse. I just wanted to get your sense for, where we are on the map with that.
Yeah. I think the honest answer is that people are aware of it, but right now, everyone is preoccupied by the moment. Can we get enough ventilators to keep people alive for the next 2 weeks?
Right.
Can we get enough testing?
Right.
That's what I've been hammering away at.
Yeah.
Do our first responders have enough masks? Right. I mean, the urgent crowds out.
Absolutely. I didn't mean to suggest.
And I'm not, and that's not to contradict your point. It's just,
right.
I'm saying that's our state of mind. And so when you say, are we aware we're going to need that? I immediately think, damn, that's absolutely right. And I got to put that on my list. But the reality is that the urgent tends to crowd out the important in life. I think, you make a particularly important point when it comes to our frontline medical workers who are going through really tough stuff right now.
It's trauma.
They're going to do it. It's their job. It's their duty. They're brave. They're decent. But, like soldiers in any war, there's trauma that has to be dealt with afterwards. And I will raise this because I'm on the phone a lot with our hospital officials. And I'll ask them what their plans are. Back to the simple thing that Congress can do. We've provided a lot of resources, including for our hospitals and medical clinics around the country. And there's no reason why some of those resources couldn't be spent to provide counseling services for those who need it. And I will put that on my list. Thank you.
Sir, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you again, John. Just a reminder for everyone on the call, if you do have a question that you would like to ask the Congressman, please, or let him know a story, a situation that you've been in or experienced throughout this pandemic, please feel free to use the chat feature at the bottom of your screen. Let us know you would like to ask a question. Please put your name, an email address, a phone number, and the town you're from, so we can definitely follow up if we don't get you on the call. But that'll give us your information so we can get your question to the Congressman. Next up, we have Loretta. Loretta, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Perfect. Congressman Malinowski, I direct the Human Rights Institute at Kean University, and this year our focus was on voting as a human right. My students and I have been working really hard to register voters and get them to come out and vote, and I'm very concerned about what's happening right now. not only in Wisconsin, but in the state of New Jersey as well, where voters are being disenfranchised because we can't access things like absentee ballots. In order to get an absentee ballot, you need to download an application, you need to print it, you need to sign it, and you need to mail it. With companies closed, schools closed, libraries closed, a lot of people don't have access to technology or printers. I realize that this is a state issue, but what can Congress do to make sure that we're actually able to use our voices when it comes time to?
Well, thank you for that question. As I said earlier in the call, I'm very worried about where we're going to be in November when it comes to voting. And I think you rightly point out that even in New Jersey, where we do have no excuse absentee voting, we have a system that allows everybody legally to vote by mail. There may still be practical difficulties if we're going through this situation. We're going to have to talk to our governor and our county clerks about some practical solutions to make sure that everybody who wants and needs to vote by mail, especially if we're still suffering some version of this, is able to do it. The Congress has, thanks to our efforts, provided some money for states to do this, not just for states that need to make the transition to vote by mail outright, but for states like New Jersey that want to improve our system. And I will be encouraging our state to be applying for funds under that program. But again, to emphasize, we cannot postpone the November election. We've never done this before. We had national elections during the Civil War. We had national elections in World War II. We've had national elections. We had them in 1918 when we had a massive pandemic. And so that means it is on us to make sure that it is as easy and as safe as possible for people to vote in that election. So thank you. And I'd love to get your more, if you have any more detailed recommendations about what New Jersey should be doing,
Sure.
I'd love to get them from you.
Sure. And I know that our students are really committed to making sure that whatever can be done to make the primaries and the general election go smoothly, we're committed to doing as well.
Good. Look forward to getting those thoughts from you.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you again. Our next question, Tom, I will read it for them. Is there any chance of eliminating the $10K real estate tax deduction due to the current coronavirus crisis?
We are proposing it. I led a letter to our leadership a few days ago in the Congress urging that at least temporarily, although I think it should be done permanently, we need to restore the full deductibility of our state and local income taxes, the SALT deduction for short. This, ever since we've had an income tax in America, state and local taxes have been deductible from our income when we determine how much federal income tax we pay. It's an ancient principle, no double taxation. The 2017 tax bill, for the first time in American history, undermined that principle. It hurt states like New Jersey particularly hard. I believe that was deliberate. We've been trying to reverse it. In December, I helped lead an effort to pass a bill in the House to restore the full deductibility of state and local taxes, and we passed that bill in the House of Representatives in December. It has not been taken up by the Senate, not surprisingly. That's where we are in Washington. So again, in short, we are pushing for it. We've asked for it. Speaker Pelosi has said that she wants to do it as well. I do expect continued resistance from the leadership of the Senate, realistically.
Thank you, Tom. Our next question comes from Anne from Cranford. Anne, can you hear us? Anne?
Yes, hold on. Hold on. Just give me a second. Yes.
No worries.
Hi.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, so I have two questions. I have a mom who has dementia in a nursing home in Basking Ridge. And we haven't been able to get, I understand from the mayor, the governor's briefings that approximately half the assisted living and care facilities in the state have at least one COVID case. And I'm just wondering how I can find out what's the status of the nursing home that my mom's in. When you look at their website, there's the general information. Here's all the measures that we're taking. Yet when you call, you can't really get any information.
Let's see if we can help you get that.
And then I had one other question, and on the scale of things of importance, it's not really that important, but in the long term, we've had tickets on airlines that they've now told us, even though many of these airlines are being benefited from the stimulus package, hey, we're gonna, if you don't rebook your ticket with us and you need to cancel, we won't charge you a fee, but we'll hold your ticket for the cost of your ticket for 24 months, and then we'll offer you a refund. And so for me, it's about $3,000, which is a lot of money. And granted, I know it has nothing to do with the very pressing issues that you're handling right now, but I'm just wondering if they did benefit from the stimulus package, why are they also able to hold customers' money and you can't get a refund?
Are they saying that you can use that ticket
you can use
on
it
another?
As a credit. If you
Yeah.
don't use it as a credit in 24 months, this is specific to United. At the end of 24 months, they'll give you your money back.
Okay. Yeah, we kind of want people to get money now.
That's my thought.
That's like the
I'm an independent, work independently and only on commission. So
yeah.
You can imagine there's not any money coming in, which we can deal with in my family. But, I just think it's really unfair if they're benefiting on one hand that they're penalizing the very consumers who support them on the other hand.
Let me follow up on that one with you.
Thank you.
They are hurting, but they're getting some federal support. So, and our watchword has been get people money now.
Thank you. I appreciate all your hard work.
We'll see what we can do. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Our next question, Tom, comes from Marvin from Westfield. His question is, what can Congress do to force the administration to use the Defense Production Act to make it unlawful for U.S.-made production of critical PPEs and ventilators to be sold to anyone other than FEMA?
Thanks for the question. And actually going back to Anne, the previous questioner, anyone who would like me to follow up with them, just be sure that you've left us some contact info. You can type it into the chat box and maybe just remind us, if you haven't done it already, the subject of your question, so that we know how to, if I've said we'll get back to you, we need to know how to do that. So just a reminder. On the Defense Production Act, this is what should have been done at the very beginning. The Defense Production Act is a law that enables the president, for example, in a war, to go to General Motors and say, you're making tanks, not cars. We're basically commandeering your production capacity to make something that the country urgently needs. We should have done it much sooner, and it still has not been done comprehensively, even though the president has used it in a couple of specific instances. What should be done is for the president to appoint, in my view, a group of experts within the administration, figure out how many ventilators we need, how many masks we need, all the different equipment, the drugs that are needed to operate the ventilators, et cetera. See what the private sector is producing, figure out what the gap between what we need and what's being produced is, and then use that power to make those who are capable of that kind of production to make it. And then to sell it to the federal government, which should then be in charge of distributing it. And it should then be distributed by the federal government to states based on need, not based on whether our governor is being nice to the President of the United States. Should go without saying. Although I think Governor Murphy has been quite wise to be as diplomatic as he has been with the White House. It's not something we should have to worry about in a crisis like this. So that's what should be done. Now, you asked, what can Congress do to force it? Well, we can, but it requires getting overwhelming consensus right now. I am a co-sponsor of a bill that would force the president to do what I just suggested. I would like to get it into the next package. My guess is that even though we do have some Republican support for this concept, I'm skeptical that we could muster enough in Congress to compel the president to do something that he doesn't want to do. And so we've also been just trying to persuade him. Sometimes by hammering our fists, sometimes by being nice and playing to his ego, whatever it takes, we need him to use this power sooner rather than later, comprehensively.
Thank you, Tom. Our next question comes from Kathleen. Kathleen from New Providence. Do you hear us?
Yes, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, great. My question has to do with testing. I haven't really heard a very convincing answer as to why the federal government didn't urgently establish a public-private partnership to develop a rapid test that could have begun to be used nationwide at a massive scale already. So the availability and conduct of the tests is really haphazard, and we're lagging in collecting the data. Then I wondered if it's too late to fix this, or is there something that can be done to pull it together at this point?
It's not too late. There's not a good explanation, or maybe to be more precise, there's not a good excuse. It should have been done. It could have been done. And as you know, January, February, there was a lot of denial going around. I believe despite the Chinese government's dishonesty about what was happening there, there was enough information for the United States to do what, say, South Korea did and mobilize all of our economic actors to produce the test kits and the reagents and the personal protective equipment that would have been necessary to test a lot more people much earlier in this crisis. You know, we are trying to rescue the American economy right now. We're not rescuing it from a virus. We're rescuing it from our failure to test for that virus early enough. So now it's harder in one respect because we have a lot more people that need to be tested than back then. The good news is that, you know, we have a lot of very smart people who have been working day and night to create much better testing technologies. So, you know, very soon we're not going to be relying on tests that, you know, require fairly invasive procedures and then waiting 3, 5, 7 days for a lab to get you your test results. We'll have tests where, you know, you can take a quick saliva sample and get a result very, very quickly. We'll have tests for the antibody that will tell us whether you have immunity to COVID-19. You may have had it, you may have been asymptomatic. We need to know that, because that means that, you know, at a moment when we can start reopening the country, you can be one of the people to reopen the country. So, you know, the bad news is we're late, we're paying the price. The good news is that I think we will be in a position to turn the corner relatively soon. And I'm working very hard to try to make sure that what is out there is available to my constituents in every single county that I represent. Union is the hardest hit right now, but every county is affected, and I want to make sure this is available to everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Philip. Philip from Westfield. I know we're getting to the end of our time, but we do have a few lagging questions, so we're going to try to get to those before we wrap up. Philip, can you hear us?
Here we go. Yes, I can hear you loud and clear. Tom, good afternoon. I've got to tell you, I'm quarantined to the house by my wife. I'm 83, and I'd like to get out and walk around a little, but
listen to her.
Stay here.
Right.
I'm part of a small group that has a company. We've had a deposit at Wells Fargo since 2012. They've been our bank. They tell us they can't help us with this payroll COVID loan because they were given insufficient funds. Like they got 38 billion and B of A got 250 billion. They don't have any funds to lend out. So they've taken their website down, everything. It's a little difficult. I might add though that our local Rotary found 10 rehabbed vet units, which have gone to 2 local hospitals in the J&J chain. I understand that there is a device out in Long Island now that New York State Stony Brook University that is rehabbing, or rather sterilizing masks, like 80,000 a week. And we should have a couple of those in New Jersey so that we can lower the demand for masks. And my daughter-in-law went up to Mount Sinai to get her blood tested because she may have been one of the asymmetric carriers for this thing. And they're doing work on what we had back when polio was around, gamma globulin prevention for this disease until we get a vaccine for it.
Mm-hmm.
But back to the Wells Fargo program, what's going on? What can you help us at all, or is that just something we got to wait for the next tranche?
No, that's unacceptable. I don't know what the solution is yet, but it's unacceptable. That's not what was supposed to happen.
They say they're being penalized by Treasury because of their bad actions.
Well, yes.
Running accounts for people a few years ago.
Yeah, well, that may be true, right? But the bottom line is we passed a bill. The bill says if you're a small business or under 500 employees, you qualify for these paycheck protection loans.
We've got 2.5 employees and a couple of major investors.
There you go. We did not, I don't remember putting anything in the bill that says, except if you're a customer of Wells Fargo. So it's on us to fix that. I don't know what the solution is yet, but we're all hearing this from our constituents. And this is not.
If you would reach out to Wells Fargo and find out what the real story is.
Yeah, a number of members have done that. And so this is not just a Westfield issue. This is.
I know. It's got to be.
It's all over the place. And I've heard Bank of America has also been not super.
Well, they at least got a lot of small loans.
Well, that's good. Yeah, I mean, I heard on our call this morning somebody had problems with them. Really? Again, we have to figure out what's going on. But my bottom line is, if you're a bank, you've been drafted. You're working for Uncle Sam right now with our money. And if we've given you unclear guidance, that's on us. We have to fix it, but you got to get that money out. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question will come from Diana. Diana, can you hear us?
Yes. Hi. There's a lot of people that stand to lose their Medicaid right now because maybe they went on early retirement or they may get a stimulus check. So it puts them over the limit. And some of us have really bad chronic illnesses. I have an actual immune deficiency. And with people now losing Medicaid or maybe SNAP or food stamps, that's a huge crisis to have even more people catch this virus. And most of us, including myself, will not be able to afford Obamacare. I've already spent every last bit of my savings on it.
So
terminations be halted?
So I have a simple answer to, I think, at least part of your question, which is that those rebate checks, if you get that $1,200 check, that will not be counted as income for the purpose of Medicaid or SSI or other needs-based programs that you may qualify for.
Okay, so that's good for some people, but I've had to take early retirement. I'm short $1,500 a month.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, now I can't go out and get a part-time job. I, have
Right.
several chronic illnesses. So now I can't pay my bills. And Medicaid told me they were terminating me. I'm supposed to be in the hospital getting an IV of gamma globulin. That's what I'm short in. So I'm terrified to go out. Even when this gets better, I'm like a sitting duck for it. And now I'm missing treatments and not being able to go even look for work. So others like me, can there be a temporary hold on anybody getting kicked off of Medicaid?
Let us, can we work with you individually on that?
Yeah, I've reached out to your office about 3 times now. So how would I do that? How would how could we work on that offline?
Can you leave your contact info in the chat? Do you see how to do that?
Diana, I have your information. I'm also going to send you an email for one of our staffers who can help you.
Okay, yeah, that would be great, because I've just had one bad luck after another. I've been a long-time taxpayer, and sometimes when you fall down, you just can't get back up. And now I'm facing this issue on top of everything. So
I hear you. Let's see if there isn't something we can do to help.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Again, if anyone has any remaining questions, please feel free to use the chat and ask them in there. Please remember to put an email or a phone number so one of our staff members can follow up with you. If you'd like to receive updates as well in regards to coronavirus or whatever the Congressman's office is doing, please also leave your email in the chat as well. Without further ado, then I will turn it back over to the Congressman for closing remarks.
Thank you, DeAndre. And again, thank you to everybody who participated. We're going to keep on doing these. I want to find a way to stay in touch with everybody, even as we are physically isolated from one another. I know this is a very hard situation for everyone, and all of us are experiencing it in our own personal ways. In some cases, we've created programs and solutions that will help a lot of us. But then there are individuals who will fall through the cracks. There are people who have special problems. Please reach out to us. We will do our best to help. Even though our office is physically closed, our staff still looks at the emails and receives the phone calls. And of course, by participating today, you get me and my team directly, because they're all on the video or the call, listening to all of this. So hang in there. Keep doing what you're doing. Everybody, please stay safe. Please stay healthy, and please stay in touch. I'm going to sign off now and look forward to seeing you, whether like this or hopefully in person sometime soon. Bye-bye.